Hello and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you to those of you who are here much earlier than when the session actually begins. So we appreciate that. Thank you for being ready to go. We are going to begin the session promptly at 1 p.m. Eastern time. So you've got about 3 or so minutes before then. So if you need to get some water, use the restroom, whatever you need to do to take care of yourself, please do. And then we'll start promptly at 1 p.m. All right, hello. Welcome everyone to the session. We are going to get started with our Infinite Campus webinar on Messenger with a Voice, SMS, and RDI. Before I dive in, I did want to give a chance to the North Carolina ambassadors who are here with us on the call. Matthew or Rory, anything you'd like to say to the group before we get started?
We just appreciate everybody being here today and learning more about all the different modules and products that are available. So thank you for being here. Thank you,
Awesome.
Anna, too.
Yes, absolutely. All right. Let's dive in then. Like I said, this session is all about Messenger with Voice, SMS, and RDI. And we're going to be talking about all of the features that are going to be available to you once you come on board with your new SIS. My name is Anna Peterson. I'm a training specialist from Infinite Campus. I'm based here out of Minnesota in the Minneapolis area. I'm also a former teacher. I was a middle and high school Spanish teacher for about 8 years prior to coming to Infinite Campus. And I just really enjoy getting to work with all sorts of educators and school professionals from all over the country in my work here. So thank you for being here today. Um, one of my favorite topics to train in Infinite Campus happens to be Messenger, so I'm excited to be here today. I also enjoy training some of the teaching tools that we call campus instruction, so the teacher side of Infinite Campus. You'll see also on the call today, we have Eric and Logan joining me. They're going to be helping moderate the chat as well as the Q&A. So you're going to see their names pop up, and they are also training specialists that work at Infinite Campus, and we're very lucky to have them with us today. All right, a few session details. You will have noticed that for convenience, everyone is muted. We are recording the session. So it's just going to ensure a smooth training experience, a smooth recording experience for everyone involved. Do note that automated captions are available. So if you wave your mouse around the bottom of your screen, you should see a show captions button appear. Feel free to enable those for yourself. The other items I want to draw your attention to are the chat and the Q&A, and I'd like to talk a little bit about how we'd like you to use those today. The first is the chat. So if you click that button, the chat window should appear, and you're welcome to type any comments you have throughout the session, use that for networking with your other North Carolina folks that are here on the call today. But if you have any questions that you would like us to answer for you, we are going to ask that you direct those to the Q&A and not the chat. So if we do see any questions come through the Q&A, we are just going to redirect you there. And that's just going to be because the Q&A allows us to organize those questions and answers a little bit better for you to make sure that your question doesn't get lost in the chat and that we can make sure everyone knows what answer belongs with what question, right? So take a moment right now to locate those features as we get started. All right, so now that you've located those features, let's dive into the content of our session today. We are focused on Messenger with Voice, which is the functionality, the tools within Infinite Campus that allow you to send email, voice, and text messages to really anyone that you have within your Infinite Campus database. So that could be students, it could be your student messenger contacts, which are typically your parents and guardians, as well as your staff members. And we can do all of those things using the contact data that is stored within Infinite Campus, so within your particular Infinite Campus database. An additional feature of Messenger with Voice is you also have access to our remote dial-in service, which would allow you to send a voice message in case of an emergency. And we'll talk about that at the very end of the session. All right, on the agenda, we have quite a few things to cover. So just to go through each one briefly, we're going to start out by looking at our settings. So taking a look at what customization options are available to you within the Messenger tools. We're going to take a look at contact preferences next, which will enable either you to manage what types of messages your parents and guardians, your students, your staff members to receive. And we'll also talk about the options that you have to put that power in their own hands so that you don't have to manage that yourself. So we'll talk about the options there. Then we'll actually dive into our messaging tools, starting with our Messenger 2.0 tool. We'll look at our attendance and behavior messengers, as well as our instruction messengers. So those messengers that are related to teachers, as well as students and their assignments. We will end the session by talking about reports, as well as that remote dial-in feature that I mentioned. So again, as we go throughout the session, feel free to put those questions into the Q&A feature. You're not able to unmute you to ask your questions, so make sure to type those into the Q&A, and then Logan and Eric will get you an answer. I will also pause frequently throughout the session to see if there are any common themes of questions that are coming up frequently or any questions that really should be answered for the whole group. And Eric and Logan will communicate those to me at that time. All right, so without further ado, let's get started. So starting with our messenger settings, we're going to talk about three main areas, and those are our email settings, voice settings, and then what we call our prompt preferences. So we are going to go ahead and dive into my training site. You'll notice that it's a training environment because it has this orange banner across the top of my screen. That just indicates we're in a training environment. All of the data you're going to see here is fictitious, so you don't have to worry about any student data privacy or anything like that. All right. If you are new to looking at the Infinite Campus UI, I just want to point out a couple things to you that might help you as you're watching the presentation today. The first one is on the left side, you'll see this black main menu. And this is where all of our different areas of Infinite Campus live. So for the majority of our session today, we are going to be looking at the communication area of our main menu. However, we are going to take a look at a couple things in our attendance office as well as our behavior office. Just know that anytime I click on a tool, if you ever get lost and you're like, what area of the menu is that located in? You can always check out what we call the breadcrumbs in the top right corner of your screen. And that's going to show you what area of the menu, what subsection, and then what tools specifically are we looking at. I will also say I'm going to move fairly quickly through the tools today. Don't feel like you need to take notes on how to get to these tools or remember any of that navigation. You're going to have plenty of time with your SIS trainer to actually learn the navigation and learn where all the tools are located. We're just going to focus our session today mainly on the functionality of the tool and what's possible with our messaging tools. All right, so with all of that said, let's now look at those settings I mentioned. So I'm going to start in the communication area, and then under our messenger settings, I'm going to choose our email settings first. So we'll start by talking about email. All right, so we'll zoom in a tad, get my menu out of the way. All right, so here we are looking at what customization options you do have for your email. The very first one I want to point out is that you can enter a default sender email address based on your Mailgun domain. There's a couple options you have with your Mailgun domain. You can use a Mailgun that you've already set up with your own domain from your own email provider, whatever you use. Or you can use a Mailgun that we create at Infinite Campus and share with you. Just know that if you go that route, your default email address will need to include that Mailgun domain that we created for you, right? But you do have the option to use a custom Mailgun based on, like I said, the internet or email provider that you have. All right, additionally, we do have the option to enable email attachments. It's up to you if you want to turn that on or off for your particular PSU. And that brings up a good point. I do want to mention all of these messenger settings that we're looking at today. These are for the entire PSU. So there really is no way to individualize these settings for each school. This is really going to be something you set globally for your entire PSU that will affect everyone within the district. So, like I said, we can enable those email attachments, and you can even limit the email attachment file size. So if you're finding that you're sending too many large attachments and it's bogging down your system, you can always limit that file size to a smaller size. And then you have some options for your reply to email addresses and your sender display name. So I mentioned up here, we can set a default sender email address. So any communication that we send from your Infinite Campus site would appear to come from this email address that I have my arrow pointing to right now. If you don't want to use that default email address, we could also turn on this preference, which would take the email address we have on file for your staff members, and it will just insert that as the reply to email address. So if it's coming from Anna Peterson, that email address is going to be whatever email address is stored for me within my Infinite Campus database. So that's one option. It does require you to have good email data within your site for all of your staff members that might be sending messages. Along with that, we do have the option to enable a custom reply to email address. So maybe you've gone the route, you want to use this default sender email address for everyone, but you do want to give folks the option to enter in their own custom email address if they'd like. So maybe I'm sending out a message as a teacher and I want any replies to go back to my inbox. I could type in my email address if I so choose. This also gives you the option to send emails on behalf of another person through your Infinite Campus site. So maybe you're an office manager, an administrative assistant working with an administrator, and you need to send a message on their behalf. This will allow you to put their email address as the sender so that any replies would go to their inbox and not yours. All right, and this last one is the display name itself. So similar to that reply to email address, this is just the difference between saying I can type in, for example, Miss Peterson instead of the default, which is going to default to my first and last name, which would be Anna Peterson. So if you want to give folks, maybe teachers or others, the option to customize how they want their own name to appear on that communication, we would just enable that preference as well. All right, so those are our email settings. We're going to jump to next our voice settings. So now thinking about voice calls in particular, and there's a couple preferences that relate to our text messaging. So I'm going to use my breadcrumbs in the top right corner of my screen to go back out to my messenger settings menu, and then I'm going to go to voice settings next. All right, so here toward the top, you can see we have our time zone selected. I happen to be in Central Time, so that's why you're seeing Central Time listed there. But then we do have the ability to set our dial window. So this allows us to say, when is the earliest a voice call could be sent from our Infinite Campus site? And when is the latest a voice call could go out from our Infinite Campus site?
Anna, we do have a question in the chat.
Sure.
Q&A I wanted to bring up here.
Yeah,
This
absolutely.
is, I believe, regarding to the previous page with email settings. I guess email settings.
Yeah.
How much of this tool is controlled at the district level with limited rights at the school level?
Great question.
Would basic settings be a district edit right only?
Yes. So everything you saw in the email settings page and everything you're seeing here in voice settings, these are all district controlled settings. So we do not have the option to customize it for each individual school. This would need to be a district-wide decision that's going to affect all of your folks that are using the messenger tool. All right, thanks for that clarification.
Thank you.
Yes. All right, so we set that dial window. The only messenger that's going to ignore the times we enter here is our emergency messenger. Because the assumption is if it's an emergency, we should just send that message out as soon as you need it to go out, as opposed to waiting for that dial window to open. But if you just want to make sure that our staff members are not sending emails too early in the morning and not too late at night, there's your control right here. As I scroll down, the next area I want to draw our attention to is our redial settings area. This particular section is where we can determine what the system should do if it encounters one of these redial status codes. So for example, if it gets a busy signal in response, should it redial and attempt the message again? If it gets just a no answer, should it redial and attempt the message again? And you can even say, attempt the message again, but just try it one more time. And then if it gets that busy signal or gets that no answer or voicemail, it's going to leave that voicemail message for parents and students or staff members to listen to later on. Right down below then, we do have, similar to our email settings, the ability to use our sender's work phone number as the caller ID. If we don't turn this on, then it's going to use our default caller ID number that we can choose, and any voice call that goes out from your Infinite Campus site is going to appear to come from that particular number. So if you'd rather it show the work phone number for your staff members when they're sending voice messages, you can enable this option. The other option you have here is to enable custom caller ID. So if you want folks to be able to freely type in whatever phone number they would like the message to be appear to be coming from, we can enable the custom caller ID option. All right, and then down below here, all of these messenger tool settings relate to campus instruction, which I mentioned earlier is our teacher side of Infinite Campus. The first preference here relates to a couple tools that we have on the administrative side of campus instruction. We have tools that allow you to send automated messages related to missing assignments as well as failing assignments from the admin side of Infinite Campus. And if you would like voice to be an option for those messages, then we just set this preference to yes. If we decide, you know what, we only want those to go as email communication anyway, we can always set this to no, and then we won't even have the option to send a voice call about those missing or failing assignments. The last two relate to the actual teacher messaging tools. So our teachers, when they're in the system, do we want to allow them to send voice messages, or do we want to limit them just to email and portal messages? And then do we want to allow them to send text messages? Or again, we can just limit them to any of the other delivery options. So that's fully customizable. You can pick and choose what you want your teachers to have access to specifically for their messenger tool. All right, Eric or Logan, any other questions that have come in the Q&A that would be good for the group? Getting a thumbs up. Okay, awesome, thank you. All righty then. Our next settings area then are our prompt preferences. So I'm gonna go back out to my messenger settings and back now to prompt preferences. So our prompt preferences area is where we can set a default greeting or goodbye message for any voice calls that we send out from our Infinite Campus site. So we have a couple options when it comes to setting these default messages for your voice calls. The first is we can simply type whatever message we would like the computer to read out using a text-to-speech function. It's just going to attempt to read whatever you type here in this box, and that's going to play at the beginning of all voice calls that are sent from any for any message that goes out as a voice call from your district or from your PSU. Same thing for the goodbye message. We can type in a custom goodbye message to play at the end of every call. And again, the computer is just going to attempt to read that message using text-to-speech. But you do have the option, if you like, to use an actual voice. And you can do that by uploading a WAV file. So I can click that upload WAV file option. It's going to give me the ability to upload an audio file, and that's going to play at the beginning of all those voice calls that go out. So maybe you record your superintendent's voice, or someone on staff that has really good voice for phone. You could have them record that custom message for your greeting and your goodbye, and you could play that at the beginning and end of every message, just as a little personal touch. Right. Along the same lines, we can set up a custom header and footer for your email messages. So this is a WYSIWYG editor, which stands for what you see is what you get, meaning that any of these formatting options here, we can format our text to our heart's content, and that is going to appear in the email messages that get sent out, again, for any message that gets sent out for your entire district. So sometimes we'll see folks include things like a district logo if you have one, the name of the district, anything you want to put just to alert folks that, hey, this is an official message coming from your school district. We can do the same thing for the footer. Again, really commonly, we'll see districts include maybe an address, a phone number, or any contact information for the district as a whole. And then we can see here, this particular district is choosing to use a default reply to email address. So if anyone tries to reply to an email, it's just not going to go anywhere. So they do add a little message here saying, hey, if you click reply, we're not going to get it. So make sure to use one of these other contact areas. Right. Not seeing any other questions about prompt preferences. But there you have it. So again, for voice calls and for emails, we can customize that greeting as well as the end of the message. I just saw another question. Yes.
Sorry, there's one question I'm just in the process of answering, but it would be worth showing the record message button up at the top. That does allow you to natively record or a built-in link to record a file.
Yes, great call out. If you don't have a recorder that will record in a WAV file type, this has a built-in one where you just use your phone and you dial one of these phone numbers, and it's going to prompt you to record your message. And then your WAV file will actually appear somewhere here on the screen for you to download and then upload to that tool we were just looking at. So yes, great call out. And then I had another question about prompt preferences and customizing for schools. That is one limitation. These prompt preferences are district-wide and cannot be customized for each individual school. So do keep that in mind. Yep, so all of the settings we just reviewed, those are all district-wide and cannot be customized for individual schools. All right. So in case you're wondering what these messages might look like when they're actually sent out, I do have some sample email, and I also have a sample voice and text message for us to take a look at. So we can see some of those settings in play here. So here's a sample email message you can see on my screen. A couple of things to note here. We will see whatever we chose as the sender email. That's what's going to appear here at the top of the email message. And then any custom header and custom footer we set up for our district are going to appear at the beginning and end of that message. And then we also have the ability, which we'll talk about later in the session, we have the ability to enter in what we call campus fields, which is kind of like a mail merge feature, if you're familiar with that, which allows you to insert personalized information from your database. So the system is smart enough to know if we put in student first name, student last name, it knows who it's being sent to, and it knows which student's name to fill in for that message. So you can kind of personalize things based on the data that you have in your Infinite Campus database. If you're curious about a sample voice call and maybe the text-to-speech feature, I have a sample message I can play for you so you can kind of hear what the computer voice sounds like. As a reminder, you always have the option to record a custom message in the form of a WAV file. You don't have to use the text-to-speech, but in case you do feel like you would end up using text-to-speech quite a bit, let's take a listen to this message so you can hear what it might sound like. So I am going to make sure I'm sharing my sound here. And then Logan or Eric, if you can just give me a thumbs up when I start playing this to let me know that the audio is working, that would be great. All right, here we go.
Hello, this is a message from the Plainview School District. Dear Donald, Maria Abeg, Ruger, your child, Dylan Abeg, was marked absent today for unknown reasons. Please contact the attendance office regarding this matter. Unknown absences will be counted towards the state's truancy policy. Thank you. This message is now complete.
All right. So hopefully that gave you just a little taste of what that text-to-speech might sound like. You might have heard it had the custom greeting that I had entered in my prompt preferences. So it said, hello, this is a message from the Plainview School District. And then it ended with the message that the message is now complete. Goodbye. All right. Just like for the email messages, we do have the ability to use those campus fields to allow for personalization per recipient. So it did insert the child's name into the message as well as the recipient's name. And you do have a tool that will help you teach the text-to-speech tool how you would like certain things to be pronounced. So if there are certain names that you might use frequently, or even the name of your PSU or the name of your school that you know the text-to-speech function has a hard time pronouncing, we do have a feature in your Infinite Campus site that is called Text-to-Speech Dictionary, or a TTS Dictionary. And this is where we can spell out phonetically any words that the text-to-speech computer has a hard time reading. So in this case, we had the last name Abeg, and we entered a replacement spelled out phonetically to help it read that the way we wanted it to be, the way we wanted it to sound, as opposed to what the computer thought it should sound like. Another common use of this text-to-speech dictionary is if you have any common acronyms you use. For example, here we have AES for Arthur Elementary School. This would allow you just to type in AES in any of your messages, and the computer is going to see that and just know to read the entire name of the school. I did just see a couple of questions come in asking about uploading a CSV file for the text-to-speech dictionary. We do not have an import tool that works like that. Potentially, you could do some custom data work to have that imported if you'd like, but otherwise that is going to be a manual process to add those into the text-to-speech dictionary. And then this text-to-speech dictionary is district-wide, so you can give folks at your schools access to it. They would just need to know not to delete things that other people have added to that dictionary. All right. Logan and Eric, any other questions that have come in I should answer? Okay. All right, next up is our sample text message. So I just took a couple screenshots from my own phone when I sent a test message to myself. You will see when the text message goes through, we will see at the beginning of the text message, you'll see your PSU name. So whatever your PSU is called within Infinite Campus, that will appear at the beginning of the message. And then if your message reaches a certain character limit, it may also include a link to the full message you send, which is kind of nice because it does allow you to type in longer messages than what you can normally fit in a regular text message. And so when you click that link, you'll be opening your internet browser on your phone, and then it's going to show the full message down below. And we can read everything that the school sent out about this particular absence for my student. And then do note that, again, just like for voice and email, we can use that mail merge feature to insert things like student names and other personalized information. All right, so that takes care of our messenger settings. Next, we're going to talk about contact preferences and how do we make sure that the messages we send actually have somewhere to go to on the other end. All right, so we're going to take a look at a few different ways to modify our contact preferences, which is essentially how we tell the system what types of communication do folks want to receive to which piece of contact information. So what phone calls do they want to get versus what emails do they want to get from the district? All right, so the first thing I want to point out and kind of some key foundational knowledge is we determine who can receive messages about students via their relationship with a student. So to illustrate that, I'm going to pull up a sample student here. So on this screen, we can view all of the folks that my student has a relationship to that are stored within Infinite Campus. I can see their name as well as what relationship they have to the student. And then I can also see what rights does that person have for the student that I have selected at the top of my screen. So let me zoom in a little bit so we can take a closer look at what those checkboxes actually say. All right. So here we have Donald as our example. He is Dylan's father. To the right, we have indicated that Donald is a legal guardian of Dylan, that he can receive mail with information about Dylan, that he can have portal access to view Dylan's information, and this is the one we care about most for today, that he can receive messages about Dylan. There might be others that are maybe guardians or others that reside in the household that have a relationship to Dylan, but should not receive messages or mail about the student. And we control that using these checkboxes. So for example, let's say Millie here, she happens to be Dylan's stepmom. And so what I could do, if let's say Millie's not actually considered to be a legal guardian of Dylan, I can actually control that by unchecking the box. And if I uncheck those boxes, I just make sure she doesn't have access to Dylan's information and that only his actual legal guardian would have those rights. So you can be very granular about who you're giving this level of permission and this level of access to. But in our case, she is actually a guardian, so I'll go ahead and check those boxes. All right. So once you've determined those relationships and who can receive messages about which students, then the next piece is our contact preferences, and this is going to apply to any person that exists in Infinite Campus, not just our students and not just our students' messenger contacts. This could be staff members as well. And that area is going to be our census demographics page. Toward the bottom of our census demographics page is where our personal contact information is located. So here I'm viewing the contact information for Dylan. Let's say I actually want to modify the contact information for his father. So I'm going to pull up his page instead. Scroll down. There I have the contact information that is specific to the person I've selected, which is Dylan's dad. And I can see that Donald has 2 pieces of contact information in the system. He has an email address, well, actually 3. He has a household phone, and then he has a cell phone. For each piece of contact information, we can set what type of messages should he be sent or should he receive at that email address or at that phone number. So I can say, he doesn't want emergency messages to go to email. Maybe he only wants those to go to his phone. He can say he does want attendance, he does want behavior messages, but maybe, food service messages he doesn't want to receive to his email. And you can customize it in that way. For phone numbers, you have an additional option, which is either voice or text, where you can say, yep, this cell phone number should receive emergency voice calls, but should not receive emergency texts, or vice versa. Maybe we just want to receive texts about attendance and behavior, but not voice calls. Right, so we can be very granular, very specific about what types of messages we want to be sent to these pieces of contact information. Now, it can be part of your process as you add folks into your system to edit their messenger preferences as you go. But we also know that can be a time-consuming process. So you do have a couple other options available to you to update these messenger preferences. So let's take a look at what those are. The first one is in our communication area, and it's called the Contact Preferences Wizard. And this is a batch tool that we can use to set the preferences. So all those checkboxes we just saw, we can set the preferences for these 3 groups of folks. Our student messenger contacts, so this would be our parents and guardians, our students, and as well as our staff members. So I could say all of my students' messenger contacts, all of my parents and guardians, I want everyone to make sure that they have their cell phone set to on for emergency messages. Maybe I want everyone set to receive attendance messages to their cell phone and their email. So I can control those checkboxes for everyone that I've selected using this tool. Right. Now, this particular tool is something that can be school specific. So this tool looks at what context have I selected in the top right corner of my screen. So here we can see we're looking at the 23-24 academic year, and we're looking at Harrison High School, which is my fictitious high school. So based on what I have selected here, those are the changes that are going to be made using this batch tool. right? And just as a refresher, messenger contacts, all that means is that is a person who on the student's relationship has the messenger checkbox marked. So when it says messenger contacts, that is anyone that has, I head back to relationships, anyone that has this messenger checkbox marked on their relationship with a student. That is who a messenger contact would be. So that could be parents and guardians, but it could be others, depending on who you're giving those rights to. All right. One thing I will point out about the contact preferences batch tool is that we cannot update text messaging preferences via this tool. My understanding of that is that there are some regulations around setting text preferences en masse from some of the major carriers, which is why we're not able to do that through the UI here. But if you want to give, to have some others help you with setting those text preferences, let's look at a couple other options that will allow folks to set those text message preferences for themselves instead of you having to do it for them. All right. So those two options are going to be our online registration and portal display options tools. So if you choose to use our online registration system, when folks are filling out the application and filling in all of their information, you can have them self-report their contact information. And then when they fill in a phone number, so for example, here we have someone filled in their cell phone number, it's going to give them the option to turn on voice or text messaging for each of those same contact preferences we just looked at using the batch tool or using the demographics tool. So you can put that power in the hands of the parent that's filling out this registration form. And they can also do the same for email. So if they enter an email address, they can also make those same selections for their emails. And what's nice is there is a little explainer at the bottom if they're wondering, what's an emergency message versus what's a priority message, kind of explain that toward the bottom of the screen. So that's one option if you use our online registration tools. During the rest of the year, though, what some schools choose to turn on for their portal is the contact preferences tool on the portal. So again, this can be specific to schools who you give this access to. But this contact preferences tool on our student and parent portal allows folks to self-report their contact information like we just talked about. And then in the blue box here in the bottom right corner of my screen, that is where they can set their preferences for voice and text, as well as for email about what types of messages they would like to receive. So lots of options for how to update those things. And I've seen districts, I've seen schools go a couple different ways. I've seen folks give all the power to the hands of the students and the parents when updating their contact information. And I've seen schools go, nope, we want to make sure we control that information. So we ensure that we have clean data. There's pros and cons to both, and it'll just be up to you internally to determine what settings you want to turn on or off for your particular parents and students. Oh, and good question that just came into the Q&A. What I believe happens is the contact preferences tool, you can only update your personal contact information, is my understanding. We do have some additional what we call self-service options that would allow a parent to update information for others in the household. But I don't believe that it has the ability to pick and choose those messenger preferences.
And if I may add too, they're
also
asking about if students could change their parents' settings. And I don't believe they can, but I'm going to double check right now.
Yes, double check. I am 99.9% sure that they cannot change their parents' settings, but always good to double check on that.
Unless they share their login information with their student.
Yes, and that is harder to prevent. but yes. All right. Any other questions that came in, Eric or Logan, that we should address for everyone related to contact preferences?
Yeah, just pointing out that for the contact preferences batch wizard, that is going to make changes for whatever you have set in your context. So that when you can go school by school, you could even apply some sort of ad hoc filter to just change it for kids on the basketball team or something like that.
So that tool, just as a reminder that Eric was just talking about, that was this tool where I said you could adjust those checkboxes for everyone. And then yes, good call out. We do have the ability to apply an ad hoc filter. So if you have a very specific group of students or a very specific group of staff members that you want to adjust things for, you can set up a filter to help you do that for everyone that's a part of that group. All right. And a question in the Q&A about the online contact form to be updated regularly. So that's kind of where those options come in to play with the portal here. So this would be one option, is you could enable the contact preferences to allow individuals to update their own contact information. It's a little beyond the scope of our presentation for today. We do have self-service options in the portal, which would allow folks to submit changes to their contact information via the portal. And then you can choose whether or not you want someone from the district or school to approve those changes, or if you want those to be automatically approved. Eric or Logan, if you want to grab the link about our self-service options and drop that in the chat, that might be useful to take a look at as well.
We were actually wondering, Anna, and maybe Rory knows this too. Are participants on the call, do they have campus community access yet to be able to view knowledge base articles?
Some may. The implementation meetings are taking place at different times.
Okay.
Some people are at some different stages, but some do, but probably the majority do not yet.
Okay, that's what we were thinking.
And this could also be something to just copy and paste that link and save for a time when you can access it. I know I believe some of our knowledge base links are available publicly if you click the link without logging in. So definitely give the link in the chat a try, but otherwise, yeah, you could just save it, bookmark it for later.
And Anna, which article are you looking for? I apologize.
The self-service options.
Okay.
Just any information about that.
Yep, I will find that.
Awesome, thank you. Okay, so we talked a lot about settings and preferences. Now let's actually get into the tools themselves. So we're going to start with our tool called Messenger 2.0. It's called 2.0 because it is a newer tool that came out in the last couple of years that is kind of an enhancement to the Messenger tools that we had previously. And so we'll start there. We'll take a look at what that looks like, and then we'll dive into our attendance and behavior messengers to see what abilities we have there. All right. So here we go. We're going to go back to our communication area of the menu, and we're going to choose our Messenger 2.0 tool. All right. So you can see across the top of the screen, we currently have 3 types of messages we can send via Messenger 2.0. And I will just say, related to Messenger 2.0, we are constantly getting enhancements and updates to this tool. Our developers have been working very hard on it. So chances are between now and the fall, there's going to be things that will make it even better. But let's just look at what the tool looks like right now, what you can kind of expect to be there for the fall or whenever you are particularly implementing Infinite Campus. Now, these types of messages, the reason this matters has to do with those contact preferences. So if a person has decided they would like general messages to be sent to their email address, if we create a general type of message, that is where that message is going to be sent. Same thing for priority, same thing for emergency. So that can be why it's important to select one type of message over the other. Do you want to think about when folks made their messenger preferences selections, where did they decide they wanted those emergency messages to go to versus priority, et cetera. So you might want to come up with kind of a school or district wide kind of policy of like what's considered emergency, what's considered priority. But in case you're wondering about those labels, that's kind of why they exist. Right. We in particular are going to be starting with an emergency message today. So I'm going to click on emergency to get us started here. We can see across the top that creating a message in Messenger 2.0 is a 3-step process. So step 1 is selecting who will receive the message we're about to send. Step 2 is all about creating the content of that message. And then 3 is actually sending that message out. Now, when we send messages through Messenger 2.0, we have 4 different delivery modes. So let's start with the first one. Inbox is going to be sent to anyone that has a portal account created. So this would typically be parents and students, or if it's for staff members, it would be delivered to their message center within their Infinite Campus account. Email would be sent to any email address that we might have on file. Voice would be sent to any phone number, and then text messages, any phone number that can receive those SMS messages. I'm going to leave all 4 selected, but if we wanted, we can narrow this down. So if we just wanted this to be an email, we can always turn the voice and text option off and be as selective as we want there. All right. The next thing to consider is what school year we want the computer to look at when it's choosing our recipients. So like a lot of tools in Infinite Campus, this is context dependent. So we have to tell it what academic year do we want it to look at to pull our student list, our student messenger contacts, and our staff members. So mine is set to 23-24 because that's the current year. And then I can select my calendars. Now, as the system administrator, I have access to all of the school calendars in my entire district. So on the right side here, when I select my calendar, I'm going to see all of my schools appearing as options. If I was someone at the school level that should only have access to, say, maybe my elementary school, I would only see the schools that I've actually been given access to. So this tool is okay to give to folks that just have school level access because it will only show them options for what they have calendar rights to, which is how we determine which school and setting a person should have access to. All right, so I'm just going to leave all selected because let's say this is a district-wide message I want to send out. So I'll just leave that as is. And I'm going to, again, turn on voice and text. Then I have a preferred language option. So what this will do is it will look for folks in the system that have a set language preference that I've indicated in my database, and it will send to only those that have selected that as their language preference. So in my site, I have 2 languages set up. You can set up as many languages as you would like in your particular site. So if there are common languages for families in your district, you can set up however many languages you need here, but mine are just English and Spanish. So if I wanted to send a message just to my families who speak Spanish as their primary language, I can select Spanish as the preferred language, and then it's going to filter down my list of recipients and only send to those folks that have Spanish set as their preferred language. All right, so I could type out my message in Spanish, send that out to them, then I could switch my preferred language to English, type out my English message, send that out to them, and then folks are going to get the language that they prefer to receive communication in. For me, I'm going to leave it set to no language preference because then it will just send to everyone. And now we begin adding recipients. There are two main areas to add recipients. First is students and messenger contacts, and then we have staff recipients as well. So let's start by looking at students. So if I select send to students, it's going to update to tell me here are the number of active students, so the students who are actively enrolled in the calendars that I selected up above. Right? So I can narrow down that list by choosing custom selection. And then I have some filter options. So this just helps me, again, narrow my scope to only send the message to the students that really should receive it. So if I leave the first box checked, it will only send to students who are actively enrolled on the day the message is sent out. So any dropped students, any incoming students, they would not be included in the recipient list for this message. Next, I have my grade level filter. So if I want to send this out to a particular grade level, I can make that selection or multiple selections. And then we can use our ad hoc filters, which is a tool, a separate tool that we have that allows you to build custom lists of students based on attributes that are stored within your Infinite Campus database. So a lot of different reasons you could create an ad hoc filter, but this is a great way to send out a message just to a specific group of students. For example, I think I have I don't have them in this training site. That's okay. But if I had a particular group of students, for example, let's say we needed to send a message out to folks, anyone that had a behavior event occur, we could send out just to that list. There's lots of different use cases for creating those ad hoc filters. It allows you to really customize who you're sending things to. Right, and then a recent filter that was added was this transportation filter, which is pretty exciting. So if you're tracking your transportation information in Infinite Campus, you can filter down to your incoming buses or your outgoing buses and send messages specific to those groups of students. Right? Now, within this, we can also choose to send to messenger contacts. So if I add in messenger contacts as well, messenger contacts work with the same filters because what we're saying here in the student custom selection is which students are on the list and whose messenger contacts are actually, does this actually apply to? So if my student is part of one of these groups that gets filtered down to, then I would receive that message as their messenger contact. And you can send just to students, just to messenger contacts, or both, or neither. Because we also have a third option, which is sending to staff. So in this case, I'll say this is an emergency message. I do want to send it to my staff members as well. Again, it's going to update to tell me how many staff members are included on that list. But I can also make a custom selection. For an emergency message, I probably want to leave it as all staff, but I can narrow it down by role. So if I had a message I wanted to send out just to my teachers, I could do so. Or just to my special education staff, I can do so. And then you can choose to include folks who are employed by a specific school or folks that are just employed by the district and are not assigned to a particular school. And just like with students, we can also use ad hoc filters to narrow down that list even further. All right, before we move on to step 2, Eric or Logan, any other Messenger 2.0 questions I can answer before we move on? Seeing, hold on one moment.
Yeah, one thing, we did have a question about staff who are not in the SIS database being added to messages. I let them know we do have an update coming this year for non-campus recipients, but right now it's not a functionality. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yep.
Okay.
So it's actually upcoming this spring.
Yeah.
You should be getting this update. to be able to send messages to folks that are not in your Infinite Campus database. So exactly what you said. So that's really exciting. It just is not something I can demo today because I don't have that feature available in my site yet. All right, great. So I'm going to go ahead and click the next button. Oh, actually, before I do, I want to take a look at my recipients list. So here I can see how many students and how many staff I've selected, but I don't actually know who those individuals are. So if I want to look at who individually, specifically are on my list, I can click the recipients button toward the bottom. And I'm going to get a list of all of those students that were included. If I click the plus sign next to any of their names, I'm going to see the student, if I included students, and I'll also see their messenger contacts if I included those folks. If I click to the second tab, I'll see my staff members as well.
And there was just a brief question
Mhm.
about selecting calendar options, and I'm just going to ask this out loud for the person who wrote the question. I think we're talking within this page, so it's selecting multiple calendars.
Yes. So calendars is kind of a structure we use within Infinite Campus. Oftentimes, each school has its own calendar for each academic year. Sometimes schools will have more than one calendar. That's getting a little bit too into the weeds for today. But this is essentially saying we can send this out to multiple buildings, students, or staff members if we have the rights to do so. But as a SIS administrator, we can also limit which schools and which calendars folks have access to. And so you can give this tool to any of your staff members, but they're only going to be able to send messages to the folks that they have the correct permissions to send those to. So if there's a specific question about calendar selection, I'm happy to answer it. Otherwise, I hope that was helpful in just reviewing that area. Okay, so we have selected our recipients. Now we're going to click the next button to move on to step 2, which is our content. So in our case, we're going to compose a message to be sent out about a school closure for weather. So I am going to put in a subject line that I prepared in advance, so you don't have to watch me type this out. So we'll say school closure today. Down below, depending on my district settings, I might have the option to edit the reply to email. So you might recall this is the default reply to email set up for my district. But because my district has given me the ability to do so, I can enter my own email address if I would like to. And then anyone that gets this message, it's going to look like it's coming from this email address as opposed to that district-wide email. Right. Then we compose the body of our email. And if you're using voice text to speech, the body of your email is also going to become the text that the computer will read when it sends out voice calls. But we'll talk about that in a second. When we're composing our email, we do have a WYSIWYG editor, which I mentioned before, stands for what you see is what you get. And that just means we can do all of the text formatting that we would like, and that will send through to our recipients of this email. I'll just put in some text here. So if there's something I wanted to bold, I could do so. There's some options for alignment, numbering, bulleting, etc. And then one feature I will point out is that images can be inserted into messages, but currently we only have the ability to insert an image that we can link to that's available publicly. So if there's a logo or an image that's available on your PSU website, we could link to that image to insert into your message. But we don't currently have the functionality to like copy and paste an image or upload one from your device. I will say though, that is one of the features that is currently being worked on. is what they call inline images. I don't have a target date on that, but I was given the go-ahead to say that that is an upcoming feature that is being worked on by our developers. So it's not in the product yet, but it is going to be worked on.
We have
All
a
right.
couple questions here that are
Mhm.
related. I'm just asking about templates. Can districts customize their own communication templates and push them to the schools for their use? And tying into it, does Messenger 2.0 save messages or templates?
Yes. So my short answer right now is going to be yes, we can save templates. We can share those to groups of folks. So that could be shared down to schools. It could be shared to a certain subset of staff. And we'll look at how to do that in just a moment. So let's finish composing the message and then we'll talk about templates. Right. So we've composed our message. Because my district allows me to, I could add an email attachment if I choose. And then down below is where we set up the voice message. So this is where we can enter a caller ID number if my district has allowed me to do so. I'll just put in a fake number for now. And then I can choose what type of voice call do I want to send out. Do I want to upload my own WAV file recording of someone else's voice? Or do I want the computer to read whatever I typed in my email as a text-to-speech message? And that is the option I'm going to select today. But I do want to show you again what that workflow looks like to record your message. So if you have a different recorder that will record a audio file in the form of a WAV file type, you can do that and upload it just by clicking select file here. But we do have a built-in recorder that you can use just like we saw previously in the presentation. If you click record WAV, it's going to open that same window or tab for you. And then once again, we just dial one of these phone numbers. It's going to tell you, after the beep, record your message. And then once you're done, that message is going to appear as a file on the screen that you can then download and re-upload to your Infinite Campus site. All right, so I am going to set this to text-to-speech because I just want the computer to do the work for me. And then down below, I do have the ability, because I selected it as one of my devices, I can enter my text message. So I'm just going to keep it really simple for today. You can see down below, we have a limit of up to 1,000 characters. So you can exceed that normal text character limit. Just remember that if we exceed a certain number of characters, it's going to show up with that link in the text message where folks will have to click on that link in order to view the entire message. Right, and then with all of those options, we have the ability to preview and test our message. So if you just want, for your peace of mind, to see what is this email going to look like? What is this phone call going to sound like or text message look like? You can test all of those things before you actually send out your message for real. All right. So that is the content of the message. That was step 2. Step 3 is send the message, and then we'll talk about templates. So I'm going to move on to step 3, where I have 2 options. I can send the message right now, immediately. So if I'm ready to send this out right now, I could go ahead and leave it set to send now. I can click the blue send button in the bottom right, and I'm good to go. However, maybe there's a message that you want to send out later today or even later this week. We can set up to schedule a message to go out at a different time. So if I choose schedule one time, it's going to have me select a date as well as a time to send this message. And then just know that you can choose to receive a confirmation email if you want to keep that for your records. All right, so I'm just going to send this now. Right, and then we are going to click send to send this message off. So I click send, I get a processing message, and I should get a green message when it is, oh, and I got a fail to process. Interesting. Okay, so this is even a good example of an error that can occur. And my guess is that it's because I put in a fake number as the caller ID is my guess, but I'd have to look into it a little bit more. But once you've sent that message, you're either going to get the success message, or in this case, we got the error message that it failed to process. And when we have sent that message, we can view it in the sent message log. So we're not going to go there quite yet, but this is a good lead in to one of our next topics, which is going to be reports. So we'll be able to take a look at that sent message log and view the message that went out, what its status was. And then we can even view our Mailgun message log to view additional information about what maybe that error was that occurred. All right, but we had a question about templates. So I'm going to go back to previous step of my content. If I decide, wow, that was a really great message I composed, and I want to send that out the next time we have a weather cancellation, and I don't want to have to reinvent the wheel every time. So let's just save it as a template. That way I can just pull it up and be ready to go when the next school closure happens. So to do that, I'm going to click the template button here and then give my template a name. So I'll say school closure weather. Now I have the choice. I can save it to my templates, which means it will only be accessible and visible to me in my user account. Or we can save it to a user group. So if I want to say, you know what, it might not be me sending the message next time. It might actually be one of the administrators at my school. I could save it to a user group and select the administrator's user group. And now any user that is a part of that administrator's group would be able to view and access this template from the Messenger 2.0 tool. Right, now one feature we do have is if you're worried that someone may mess with your template a little bit, we can lock a template down. If I click the more information, it just is telling us that we as the creator of the template can lock it and other users cannot override it. They could make a copy and then save their own changes, but they wouldn't be able to modify the original template that you created. So if that's something you want to set up ahead of time for your administrators, your school staff, and then save it to their user group so it kind of gets pushed out to them, we do have that option to lock it down, and that way they'd just be forced to make a copy of that template and then make their changes if they wanted to. All right, Eric or Logan, any other questions that have come in that we should answer for everyone? All right, let me know if there are. Okay.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, one thing. We did have one question about, is this included with the NC State deal? Messenger with voice, are they having to opt into this? Maybe Rory
It's a great
could
question.
speak to
Rory,
that.
can you speak to that?
It is included.
Okay.
Great. Good question. Right. Actually, before I'm going to go ahead and save that template this time. And I'll save it to my administrators group. Now, let's say I return to the tool at a different time and I load up my main Messenger 2.0 screen now. Now I can choose the Select Template button, which is going to allow me to view any templates that have been saved that I have access to, depending on the message type that I've selected. So these are general messages. If I go over to the Emergency tab, now I can see that school closure template that I created. If I needed to make changes to it, I simply click on that template. I get the same editor that we saw before, and I can make any adjustments that I need to, and just make sure to save those changes. The other thing that we can see on the Messenger 2.0 screen is an upcoming messages area. So we can see here, these are all of the scheduled recurring messages that have been set up and are ready to be sent out by my site. So I can see I have a few different low medication messages that are ready to go out at the prescribed date and time. And this is actually a really nice lead into just showing another way the Messenger tool can be used. If I go ahead and click Edit Message, excuse me, here we can see this low medication message was set to be sent out to students' Messenger contacts. And if I click on custom selection, we can see that a couple different ad hoc filters were employed. So we have an ad hoc filter specifically built to find students who are low on their prescription medication that is stored at school. So that's not a pre-built filter that comes in, but it's one that I could create for my district or for my school. And then we can use that to send out those messages. Right. The other thing we can see is if we have any messages that are in progress, and this is a little bit harder to catch in a training environment, but if you have any messages that are in the process of being sent, they'll show up in the in progress area. There's even a cancel option if you can catch it in time, but in my case, we did not catch it in time. All right. So that is the basic functionality of Messenger 2.0. Now, and so just to recap, we talked about the different modes, how we can deliver those messages, talked about recipient selection, so narrowing down that list of who those messages get sent to. We talked about templates, as well as scheduled and in progress messages. The next two messenger tools that we have on our list are our attendance messenger and our behavior messenger. And I kind of lump the two together because they function very similarly to each other, where we will use filter criteria to narrow down that list of who gets this message. And then we'll also take a look at how we can build templates and schedule those attendance messages to be sent out. All right. So for this, I'm actually going to head to my attendance office, my attendance messenger. One difference about the attendance messenger and behavior messenger compared to Messenger 2.0 is that it is dependent on the context that I have selected in the top right corner. So once again, we can see I've selected my 23-24 school year and I'm at Harrison High School. So if I were to create a message using this tool right now and send it out, it's only going to be looking for students who are enrolled for the 23-24 year at Harrison High School. If I wanted to send the message for a different school, I would have to switch to that school in my context and resend the message. We'll look at a better way to do that in just a second. But just from basics functionality standpoint, that is how this tool operates. Attendance messenger and behavior messenger. these messages can only be sent to student messenger contacts. We can't send these messages directly to students. We can only send them to those folks that have that messenger checkbox on the relationship they have with their student. Now, we do have the option to save templates, just like in Messenger 2.0. So I have a template already built. So I'm going to go ahead and select that. Here's my absent unknown template. And just like we saw in Messenger 2.0, we can save templates to our user account, or we can save it to a user group that others would have access to. So same kind of functionality there. But what differs about Attendance Messenger is that we have very specific filter criteria that we can choose related to attendance. So I can tell the system, when we're sending this absent unknown message, which grade levels should be considered, all grades or just one. And then what status and excuse do we want to be considered? So typically in Infinite Campus, your status is you're either absent, tardy, or early release, or if you don't have a status, that just means you're present, right? So this is currently set to send a message to any student's parents where that student has been absent for an unknown reason for at least one period. Right, the other options for excuse are excused and unexcused. The other important thing to know about the attendance messenger is that it will only consider attendance events for one day, and that is the day the message is sent. So if for cases where you maybe need to send communication, maybe you have a policy about, if they get 10, if they miss 10 or more days of school with an unexcused absence, they get referred to truancy or whatever the policy is for your particular area. Any communication where it needs to span multiple days worth of attendance events, we're going to use a tool instead that's called attendance letters, which allows you to generate PDF or printable communication to be sent out. We would not be able to use the attendance messenger for that because the attendance messenger will only consider one day's worth of attendance events. All right. So really great for cases where you need to send, if a student was marked absent and you want parents to be alerted, you can set that up. If you send that, I saw someone put an example in the Q&A that you send nightly communications for unexcused absences. Absolutely, we could do that. We would just set the excuse to unexcused instead. And then in a second, we're going to look at how we can set up a schedule so that this gets sent out automatically instead of you having to do this over and over again. All right, so we've set our attendance criteria. I will also just note that we can employ ad hoc filters here again. So if you need to narrow down that list of students even further, we have that option. We can also choose an enrollment effective date. This is going to look for students whose attendance, who is actively enrolled as of the date that we have chosen. And then we can also choose a language preference, just like we saw in Messenger 2.0. So here, if I had a Spanish language message I wanted to send out, I could switch that over to Spanish to make sure it only gets sent to folks who have indicated their preferences to receive Spanish language communication. Right. We have the same options for delivery devices. I'm going to go ahead and leave all 4 of those turned on. And then again, we can customize that reply to email because my district has allowed me to. We could customize the caller ID because my district has allowed me to. And then we get into the actual content of the message where we have the email subject line and then the body of the email. So we have a lot of the same formatting options we saw in Messenger 2.0. One thing that I did not talk about in Messenger 2.0, but that is a feature for general messages, priority messages, as well as attendance and behavior, are what we call campus fields. And this is the functionality I referred to earlier. That's sort of like a mail merge function that allows you to insert personalized pieces of information that's stored in your database right into the message. The only messenger that fields are not available for is the emergency messenger. I don't have an answer as to why. I just know that that is the case. So for all messengers except for emergency messages, we can use campus fields. So we can see here, we've added a field to include the guardian's first and last name at the start of the message. And we've also made sure to include the student's first and last name. That way, if, we used Dylan earlier as our example, if Dylan's parent gets a message about Dylan's absence, it's going to fill in, Donald, his dad's name, and then fill in the student's name. So it'll have that personalized to Dylan specifically. If I click on the fields button, we're going to see that there are a lot of different types of information that I could insert into the message. So everything from demographic information to census information to attendance, transportation. And then there are even some attendance messenger specific fields, like, it'll tell you exactly which periods they missed that day, what their status was. Lots of creative ways that campus fields could be used. Attendance Messenger also gives us the option to include subreports, which are essentially small reports that you can insert into the body of your message. If I click subreport, we're going to see we have a few subreport options, and we do have some that are specific to attendance. So we could explore what all of those mean, but there's just different types of attendance reports we could include. Down below, we have similar options to Messenger 2.0 for recording a message or uploading that message or adding an email attachment. And then down below, we have the text message box, where we can also insert campus fields into text messages, if we so choose. Now, if I want to send this right now, it's just a one-time message. I can choose to just send it right now in the moment. The delivery date and the send inbox emails is just going to default to today's date and a time within our dial window today. But I could also change this. So if I wanted to send it later today, I can schedule it to go out at 3 p.m., for example. We still have the option to test our message. So if we wanted to put in our phone or email address, we can test our message and see what it's going to look like before we actually send it out to our folks. But now if I want to see who would this message actually be sent to, who meets the filter criteria that I selected above, I can click Preview Send. And it's going to give me a little summary of how many recipients, what types of devices is this message going to be delivered to. And if I click Review Recipients, it's actually going to give me a summary of each individual recipient, each piece of contact information, who the student is that belongs to them. And I can even preview specifically what this message is going to look like. So if I click Preview here, we will see any personalization that we added using those campus fields. So I can see we have the guardian's name that was inserted here. We have the student's name that was inserted here. So it's a nice way to check to make sure that the fields you chose are actually pulling in the information that you expected it to. Right, so I'll cancel out of that. Right, and if I'm happy, I can go ahead and send that message. And it thinks a little bit. Then it's going to let me know, hey, go to the sent message log if you want to see the delivery details. All right. Now, I saw a few of you come in with questions in the chat where you were wondering about scheduling attendance communication or having it happen on a recurring basis. So let's talk about that next. So I'm going to go back to attendance communication. And I'm going to choose now Attendance Messenger Scheduler. Right, and I do have an example already set up for my absent unknown template. So I'll click on that schedule and we'll take a look. All right. Now, one major benefit of using the scheduler is that you can set it up for multiple calendars at once. Remember, I talked about when you're sending just an in the moment attendance message using the attendance messenger, you can only send it to one calendar at a time. If you schedule it, you can set it up for multiple calendars if you would like to. So here we can see I have my elementary school selected, and I also have my high school, but I could select more schools here if I would like to. Here's where we set the start date. So when's the first date we want this message to go out and at what time? So I have mine set to go out at 8 a.m. and it started on October 9th. Now we tell it how often we want it to go out by setting the recurring frequency. So mine is set to daily because I want this message to be sent out every day. Sometimes I've seen folks set this to hourly because they want the system to scan every hour to see if any students meet that criteria and then send that message out. And you technically can set it to weekly or monthly. I just find these aren't as useful because remember, the attendance messenger will only consider attendance events from one day at a time. So even though you can set the frequency as weekly or monthly, it can't actually consider attendance events from an entire week or an entire month. And then we do have the option just to schedule it to go out one time in the future. All right, any questions that should be talked about, Logan or Eric, about attendance messenger or the scheduler that we've seen?
Nothing major. I think the only thing I would add just for everyone's benefit here is that this tool will only send like a message for each school, like if a child's only in one school, essentially, or if a child's enrolled in multiple schools, they'll get a message for each school, if that ever happens.
Oh, that is a great question. I don't know if I have the answer to that off the top of my head. Go ahead.
I was adding information. Just
I
in case
see.
people, yeah. So if a student is enrolled in multiple schools, the parents will get a message, text message for a child from each school.
From each school.
If they miss, yeah.
Okay.
Sorry,
Gotcha.
I just add that.
No, thank you. That's good confirmation. And I suppose that's because they have separate attendance events at different schools. So yeah.
There is a question too about if you schedule it for hourly, will it send repeat messages?
It will not send repeat messages within the same day. So if after 2 hours, it sent it out at 9 o'clock and then it sends it out at 10 o'clock, if the student meets the criteria at 10 o'clock, it's not going to then message them again at 11 o'clock. Once they've met that criteria one time, it's not going to repeat each time until it's a new day. All right. Great questions, everyone. Seeing lots of questions answered. So thank you to Logan and Eric for being so quick to answer those. I'm hardly even seeing them come in because they're answering so fast. So thank you so much. All right, so we just talked about attendance messenger, and I mentioned that behavior messenger is similar in a lot of ways. So we're going to talk about that next. And it has a lot of the same functionality that attendance messenger did. We can set filter criteria based on behavior events. We can set up templates. And we can also schedule those messages to go out on a recurring basis as well. So let's go there next. Hopping into my behavior office, behavior messenger. All right, so just like we saw in the attendance messenger, we can save templates to either our user account or to a user group that we are a member of. So this is another way, like I said earlier, to share templates to be used by different schools or by different groups of staff members. So I'm going to select a template I already have set up called physical injury. And we can see that we already have some filter criteria that's selected. So I can say, computer, please look for students in this grade, right? And so I can say all grades, I can select 9th grade. And if I hold Control or Shift, I can select multiple grades as well. I'll just say all. And then I can say what event type to look for, and I can select multiple of these as well. Mine currently is just set to look for any fighting event that occurred. And then I can even filter down by involvement role. So do I just want to send this out to parents of students who were offenders? Do I want to set up a message to send out to parents of students who were a victim in this particular incident? Or everyone? I can be very specific about who that goes to. So I'll leave it as offender and participant. Just like our other messenger tools, we can use ad hoc filters to even further narrow down our criteria. Again, we can select our effective date for enrollments as well as limiting our language preference. So again, mine is set to English and Spanish. You can add additional languages if you need to for your particular population. This next part is going to look very similar. We select our delivery devices. We compose our email, just like attendance messages. We can add those campus fields. We can add our subreports. And we can add our email attachment if we need to. And if this was going to be a voice or text message, we can turn on those preferences as well. Same scheduling functionality we just saw with the attendance messenger. So if I want to send this out just right now in the moment, I can do that. I can also set a time in the future for this message to be sent out. Again, if I click preview send, it's going to give me a little summary of how many folks this is going to, and I can review those recipients and preview my message. Right. So we'll go ahead and send that. Now, just like our attendance messenger, we can schedule these messages to go out using our behavior messenger scheduler. So this looks very similar to the attendance messenger we just saw. Again, we can choose a calendar. So this is a difference from the attendance messenger. We can only set this for one calendar at a time. So if you have multiple calendars that you want to set up a schedule for, you will have to repeat this process multiple times, once for each calendar. So I'll set this up for my high school, and I can say what time it goes out and starting on what day. And then I can set that recurring frequency. However, I will just note that just like the attendance messenger, the behavior messenger will only consider behavior events from one day at a time. So again, if you need to send out communication to generate based on multiple days worth of behavior events, that's when we would use our behavior letter tool as opposed to our behavior messenger. And again, that behavior letter tool is used to typically generate printed communication, although what it really does is generate a PDF, and then it's up to you how you want to use that PDF. Right. So we can schedule those messages just like attendance messages, and we can set that filter criteria and save those templates. Any questions about the behavior messenger that came in that we want to answer for the whole group? All right. Next up, I'm going to briefly talk about our instruction messengers. So we have 2 instruction messengers, so messages related to our students and teachers. We have 2 of them that are available from the administrative side. So you might give access to principals for these, other staff members at your school. Typically, we don't give teachers access to this tool because it will message all students within a selected calendar, or excuse me, all parents of students within a selected calendar. But those are our failing assignment scheduler and missing assignment scheduler. So I'll choose failing assignment scheduler first. And I have a schedule already set up. But this is where I can set up a call or an email to go out at a certain time and at a certain frequency to any students that have a failing grade on an assignment. So we can see here, I could choose email as my delivery device. I could also choose voice, and that's based on my district settings, if I can use voice or not for this tool. Just like we saw for the other schedulers, we can set the time and the frequency. And then again, notice that this is one calendar at a time. So if we had multiple schools that we want to send this message for, we have to set up the schedule multiple times, once for each school. All right, we say when we want this message to begin and when is the last day we want to send the message. And here's where we define what counts as a failing assignment, and it is based on percentages. So this does require your grades to be entered as percentages. And here's where we set what that threshold for what's considered to be a failing grade on an assignment. All right. Then we set up our message similar to what we've seen in all of our other messaging tools. We do have a template that's kind of already built in that's going to include the failing assignment list, and it will even insert your school's portal URL right into the message itself, but you can customize this. So I can type anything I want there. I could add additional fields if I'd like. Right. Then we also have the missing assignment scheduler, which is very similar, but now instead of looking for failing assignments, it's looking for assignments that are marked as missing. So this is a flag that teachers have in their grade book where they can indicate that an assignment is considered to be missing. And then that is what triggers this scheduler to know which assignment should be included in this list of missing assignments. Once again, we have the option to allow voice messages for this if we'd like. And again, we can customize this message if we would like to add our own wording in. Right. So those are from the administrative side. And again, this is going to go out to parents of students in an entire calendar. Teachers, on the other hand, they have their own messaging tool that they get to use within campus instruction, which is the teacher side of Infinite Campus. Teachers are different from administrators in that they may only send messages to students or students' messenger contacts that they have a connection to via a course roster. So in other words, they can only message students or parents of students who they actually teach and they have on a section roster. That's by default. There are ways to give teachers access to message using other tools. It's just not very common that we see that used. And typically we find that schools want to limit teachers to only be messaging the students and families that they have access to, that they actually have in their classes. Right? But teachers can still send portal, they can send email, and if you choose it for your district, you might remember this was a setting we could pick. You can choose to enable voice messages or text messages for teachers, or you can turn them off altogether and just have them send portal or email. The teacher message editor looks very similar to the ones we've already seen. You compose your email message. If you're using a voice message, you can record one or add a WAV file or use text to speech. What's different here is that there are 3 types of messages teachers can send. There's a general message, which is just for things like class announcements. There's also grades messages and missing assignment messages. A grades message allows teachers to filter based on criteria for their students in progress or posted grades. So in this case, my teacher is sending a message to students who currently have an in-progress grade of a D+ all the way through F in my class. So it allows me to have the system automatically filter down just to those students or the parents of those students and send a message just to that group. Or you could look at it more of a positive light. You could message all of your students who have, A+ in your class. You can choose whichever grade you'd like to filter down that list. Then for missing assignment messages, we can also pick and choose which assignments do we want the system to look for. So here my teacher is specifically messaging students or parents of students where the student is missing their persuasive essay in the gradebook. And as Eric mentioned in the chat, you can be specific about what types of messages you want your teachers to be able to send. You can say, nope, we don't want our teachers to send missing assignment messages. You can disable that. You can disable general messages or grades messages as well. All right, I've got about 17 minutes left. Let's wrap up with reports and then we'll talk about remote dial-in. So there are 3 reports I want to talk about, or excuse me, 4 reports, but kind of 3, and you'll see what I mean in a second. Those are our sent message log reports, and then our mailgun message log and recipient log. These are the tools that you have as an administrator or that you can grant to other staff members to be able to view a log of what communication they have sent from your Infinity Campus site. Oh, good question. I just saw coming through the Q&A. They're wondering about the grades message. That grading scale you saw, A through F, that was because that particular school is set up for A through F grading. If your school uses a different scale altogether, it would be customized to whatever scale is used for that particular course that the teacher is sending the message for. So excellent question. It is going to be whatever is set up for that particular course. All right, and then let's pull up my training site once again and take a look at the sent message reports. So if I click on communication, we're going to actually see 2 sent message logs on this screen. We have, let me zoom out a tiny bit. We have a sent message log under the messenger header. We also have a sent message log under the messenger administration header. And here's the difference. The one we see under messenger is for individual user accounts. So if I want my teachers to be able to pull up a log of the messages they've sent to their students, I could enable this sent message log tool for my teachers, and they would only see the messages they personally have sent from their user account. For an administrator though, we can give access to this other sent message log tool under messenger administration. And this tool allows me to see all the messages that have been sent for my entire, across my entire Infinite Campus site. So any message any user has sent is going to appear in the admin send message log. So that's the difference between the 2. the reports look very similar. They contain the same information. It's just a difference of whose sent messages do you get to see? Just your own personal messages or other folks' messages too. So I'm going to actually use the admin one as our example. This does function using a date range, and it's going to default just to today's date. So I'm actually going to go back a little bit farther in time. Let's see if I had, yep, okay. I'm going to go back to all the way to February 23rd to make sure we catch some other messages. All right. And let's see, we had a student behavior message we can take a look at. So in this case, this happens to be a message that I sent from my account, but I can also see in this list messages from other accounts, from this other system administrator or anyone else in the system. When I click on the message from the list, it's going to open a little summary for me. It's going to say how many recipients were there for this message, what types of devices. I can see one person didn't have any device, meaning we didn't have any contact information for them in the system. It's going to show me how many emails were attempted and how many voice and text calls are attempted. Right. Then down below, we can see what delivery devices were included. And I can even print a sent message report for myself. Which is going to have a couple different useful things. One of which is it'll have status codes. So it looks like in one case we had a call error, and then in another case we had a text message that failed to send. Right. We can also see the details of the message. So if I want to see specifically, maybe I'm checking on what messages my teachers are sending, I can see the actual body text of the message that went out to know exactly what was contained in that email or in that voice call that was sent. Right, and then toward the bottom is where we have a summary of the actual contact information that it was delivered to. And so we can see specifically that Donald is the one that had that failed text message, and that Millie is the one that had the call error. Right. There is one other type of report that will give you similar information, but it's slightly different, and that is your admin mailgun message log. And this will give you some additional statuses for the messages you send. So up here we can see we might get a status of accepted, meaning the mailgun accepted the request for the email and it's in the queue. If it was rejected, we might see that. If it was actually successfully delivered, we'll see a message. If it failed to deliver, we'll see that. And then it will even tell us if the email recipient clicked on their spam complaint button within their email client, and it'll come up with a complained status. This again is an admin tool, so this would be for all messages sent within, specifically email messages, but all messages sent by any user. Right. The last report I want to point out is the recipient log. So here we have the recipient log. And what this will do is allow you to choose an individual person. So here we have Dylan's dad, Donald, pulled up. And down below, I can see a list of every single message that has been sent from my Infinite Campus site to Donald. So if I get a phone call from Donald and he's saying, I didn't get the message about the school closure because of weather, we can look to see, hey, did that message actually get sent to Donald or not? And looking here, nope, he didn't get that message. But I can see maybe he says, oh, I didn't get the behavior message. Well, it says there's a behavior message here, so I can click on that and dig a little bit more into the details to find out what was in that message that was sent. And then I can print a recipient report, which looks very similar to what we saw. And then we'd be able to look and say, well, Donald, we sent it to these email addresses and this phone number. Looks like the text message failed, but does look like the email did send. So it helps troubleshoot a little bit any communication issues that may arise with your staff or with your parents and students. All right, any questions about the reports, Eric or Logan, that have come up that we should answer for the whole group? No? Okay. So then the last item on our agenda is remote dial-in. Remote dial-in is an outside system that we use to provide you with the remote dial-in service. So we actually use a kind of a third-party system to enable the remote dial-in feature. And when you go through your implementation training, this is something that your SIS training specialist is going to help you set up in the beginning. So just know that you do have support at the beginning to get started with this, but there are 2 additional resources that Logan already put in the chat that you may want to be aware of. These are links to our campus community knowledge base, similar to the other links that have been shared. If you can open them now, great. Otherwise, feel free to save them for later to look back at when you do have your campus community access. But those 2 articles are focused on remote dial-in administration and then how to actually create a campaign to be sent out. So I'm going to back up for a second and just make sure everyone's on the same page as to what remote dial-in is. It's a little strange because it's one of those things, it's a service that we hope you never have to use, because remote dial-in is usually used to send out a voice message in the event of an emergency where you're unable to access the internet to send out a message from your Infinite Campus site. This allows you to use your phone to dial in and set up a voice message to be sent out to all of your contacts in your system so that they would receive those messages. So again, we really hope you don't have to use it, because it would mean something, you know, in a real emergency has occurred. But in case of emergencies, we do have this feature. So I'm going to go to the administration article first. And I will just preface by saying that because we use this third-party system, I don't have a training site to demonstrate this particular functionality with. But like I said, your SIS training specialist is going to help you actually set this up in the beginning. So don't panic there. You'll have support. But if you're curious, this article does go through. It'll show you, here's the website you would use to first log in. Your SIS training specialist will provide you with your username and password when you first get started. So you're not going to have that information yet, but you will when it's time. And then it will just kind of walk you through some other basic information about the functionality of this particular service. One main piece of functionality is your PIN users. These are the list of folks at your district who are allowed to call in and create the remote dial-in campaign. So if you have a list of particular users, maybe that's your school principals or your emergency team, you'll be able to set up those folks with their own PIN user ID, and then they would be able to dial in and enter their PIN and set up that remote voice campaign as well. The other article I'll draw your attention to is the creating a campaign article. So if you're just curious, what happens when I dial that number? What is actually the process of setting up that voice campaign? This article actually lists out step by step the voice prompts you're going to hear when you call in to set up your voice campaign. So it's got step 1, it's going to list all the prompts that you'll receive. Step 2, what do you do next? So some folks even print out this article to save for their records, and that way you have it in case of an emergency. If you can't get online, you have that paper copy saved. So again, not able to demonstrate this functionality, but just know that it exists and that you'll have support setting it up from the beginning. And with that, we have covered all of the items on our agenda. So thank you so much to Eric and Logan for manning the chat for us. Eric, are there any last questions that you feel like we should talk about before we wrap up?
Just quick mention that you will have an option to decide how long you want to keep the records of messages on hand. You can choose to keep those on hand forever, although eventually that might bog down your system. But you will have the option of choosing a specific year for how long messages will remain in the database. And usually that's a decision made by the district based on how long they legally need to hold on to messages.
Good. Thank you. That's great. I'll leave you with this then, everyone. Here are the upcoming features that I am at liberty to share with you. Coming up this spring, we already mentioned one of them. We will be releasing the ability to add non-campus recipients using Messenger 2.0. So if you have any folks that aren't in your database, but you do need to send a message to them, you'll be able to add those folks in to send out a message. We'll also be releasing the ability to select individual recipients. So you might remember when I was going through Messenger 2.0, I was talking about lots of ways to narrow down the list of students or parents or staff members that you're sending the message to. Well, this will allow you to add in just individuals and pick and choose specific people instead of having to narrow down using an ad hoc filter or something like that. The other two pieces of functionality that I know are coming, but I don't have a date on those yet, is inline images. So being able to add an image that you upload from your device to a message as opposed to having to link to a publicly available image. And then we'll also be adding the ability to roll templates forward. So if you have a great template you set up this year and you want to be able to use it next year, we'll have the option to roll those forward into the next year so you can continue using those. All right.
And then
So
I would
with
add to
that,
that, Anna.
oh, go ahead.
I
Yeah.
do see some documentation that there is also not a date on it yet, but in the works for a social media integration for Messenger 2.0.
All right. Awesome. So we'll leave you with that. Thank you so much for your time, everyone. We really appreciate your attention and your questions. I hope this was helpful in making some decisions, and I hope you have a great rest of your day. So thank you.
Great presentation, Anna. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Yes,
and
thank you. Mary Beth, I do see your question in the Q&A about adding PDF attachments. We do currently have the ability to add PDF attachments using our messenger tools. The attachment functionality, though, has to be enabled by the district. So as long as that is turned on, you will be able to add PDFs as attachments to your messages. All right. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and end the meeting. Have a great day, everyone. Bye.